Hey Internet, welcome back to What's the Points? I'm Mike. So today I wanted to walk you through reasons to hoard your points. Not to cash them out right away, but actually to sit on them like a dragon guarding its pile of gold. I intend this video somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but this is a counterpoint to the usual wisdom of earn and burn. And so I'm going to stake a contrary position today. So if that sounds interesting, stick around. And if you can, please take a couple seconds and like and subscribe. It'll really help out this growing channel. So the genesis for this actually came from a couple of videos I saw from my colleagues Chad from Chad's Money Minutes and Uncle Luke. They both did videos on their large unused points balances and why they should have spent them sooner, and just kind of a survey of everything that they have. And I was going to steal that idea because I do have quite the spread right now of different points in both transferable and as well as in hotel and airline miles. But then I had the idea today. I said, well, I'm just going to decide to not feel bad about this because this hobby, as long as it makes financial sense for you and you're not doing anything that's jeopardizing your financial health, I say, hey, go to town and use or don't use your miles, because there's always situations where you might be better actually waiting. So let's go over what I think are, without any particular order here, the top 5 reasons why you should not cash out on your points. And just as a disclaimer to begin with, don't let this opinion dissuade you from taking a trip that you really would want to take and couldn't otherwise unless you cashed your points. So that's my disclaimer. If there's an experience you want to have and you feel like it's not accessible to you unless you cash out on some non-monetary currencies, as you could call them, points and miles, then absolutely do that. Don't listen to me on. But presuming that that's not the case and you actually feel like you could go either way, then here are some reasons why you might want to pause. So the first one is the most obvious, which is if you're not getting a good cents per point value, a reasonable redemption value. And there's different ways to look at this. The Points Guy and Frequent Miler and others maintain a frequently updated list of what they consider to be a reasonable average or median value that you can hope to expect from your points. And so if you are not meeting that, or certainly if you're significantly below that, then really you should take a step back and look at all of your options and say, is there not a better plan that I might be able to use a different currency for? Or more likely, is it better to just pay cash and then likely earn loyalty points back from whatever your brand is that you're buying from? That would be one way to do it. If you are hesitating on whether or not to book something and you're not sure if it's the right decision to make, then take a step back, and there's a risk that availability might not be there. So take that into account. If it feels like a redemption that you're either super excited about or you know that you're getting good value, then don't hesitate, book it, because most likely it's refundable anyway. But otherwise, don't put pressure on yourself to redeem something if it doesn't feel like something that you're actually particularly interested in. That might seem like it would go without saying. But as someone who's getting a little bit further into this hobby, I have to say the temptation to book things, whether or not they actually really fit into our plans, is something to take a look at. Because sure, devaluations happen, and that's just part of the risk of this game. Instead, what you could do is look at how do you put that energy into maybe streamlining your setup and consolidating the number of currencies that you have, because that is a risk that you want to look at. And so if you are sitting on, for example, like I am, a lot of Wyndham points, and from experience, I know that I might not be able to really have as many options as I thought I would. Then sure, if I see something that fits into my plans, without a doubt, I'm not going to hesitate. I'm going to use as many of those as I can. But otherwise, if it's something that I know that I've got a lot of options for, then I'm not going to rush to use them. So for me, a good example right now are Hilton or Hyatt, because I know that there's a lot of properties in a lot of locations, and even if there is a big devaluation, I should still be able to find something usable, even if I don't get quite as high of a level or as many number of nights as I would have hoped. I would rather wait to use them on something that actually I know fits into my plans and or that I'm actually particularly excited about. And maybe it's the destination and what it allows you access to more so than the property itself. So that's something to take a look at. I know for myself that there have been certain Hyatts that I've stayed at in this last year that might not have been in as convenient a location as I would have liked, but I was staying there because I really wanted to stay there, either to earn loyalty towards status, or because I felt like, well, I have a lot of chase points. I might as well use those as fast as possible. So, next time I do that, I might actually, really prioritize finding something that is convenient and good enough rather than, the best possible redemption. So that's the first and biggest reason why you might want to wait, is because you're not going to get as good a value from your booking as you might hope. And you think that you, at least in the somewhat near future, I would say, hope to be able to find another option, then there's really, I don't think, as much harm in waiting as people say. One caveat to look at is expirations. And so this is one reason why I and most others in this hobby generally prefer transferable currencies. And even though it might be tempting to take advantage of a transfer bonus, I think unless it's with a partner that you feel very confident you're going to use in the near term, to really hold off on that. I think if you look at certain program changes within this last year, Virgin Atlantic comes to mind. And even though right now, ironically, due to Virgin's change to a dynamic pricing model, in this particular instance, we are actually seeing a greater abundance of sweet spots for reward redemptions, as well as, interestingly, a big decrease in the typical fees that are being added on and surcharges. And so in this instance, I think if you are able to find a redemption that meets your needs, you should definitely consider that. But, I think a lot of people are predicting that this is maybe a temporary thing, that this is a way of sort of softening the blow of moving to a dynamic model as well. Let's obscure this with some good press. And so that is, I think, is a significant risk here. But more to the point, I think, is just it's an example of the types of drastic changes that can happen to a program. And so this kind of leads us to what I would consider to be the second reason to consider whether or not you should spend your points, would be really how hard was it to get? How much top end value do you feel like you might lose? So a good example would be, let's say you're thinking of buying some points on sale for either Hilton or for IHG. Both of these programs frequently have sales where you can buy points at half a penny each. and there are annual limits. So some people like to max out on purchasing those even without specific redemptions in mind because they know that they use these chains frequently. I think you could make the argument that because the points are already fairly low value, that there's not as much room for devaluation. Now, this could be a controversial take, but and I haven't run any kind of mathematical analysis to prove this point, but it's just a sense I have, and I would like to know if you disagree. If you do, or even if you do agree, please leave a comment and let others know, what do you think of this? Is a point that is already quote unquote not worth too much? Does it have less room for devaluation? We'll see. I mean, I know that Hilton is already increasing the upper end of their standard room rates, more typically from like the 120,000 to the 150,000. So, while that is a devaluation, it's not huge. And, it really comes down to your use case. I recently bought a few hundred worth of Hilton points, knowing their limitations, and in particular that where I live, I don't expect to really ever find good value for the points. So I do expect to need to be traveling, and more to the point, staying at a more higher end hotel, because at their mid and especially lower range, it just seems like typically you get really poor value. IHG, on the other hand, because you get the fourth night instead of, by contrast with Hilton and Marriott, the fifth night free, I think there's a little bit more flexible. And maybe you could make the argument that having a stash of IHG points gives you more flexibility in your travel setup. And therefore, maybe you don't want to feel as much pressure to spend those as, say, Hilton points. On the other hand, while Hilton at least seems to not be fully dynamic, meaning that there is these sort of buckets that a so-called standard room price will fall into, IHG seems to be considered kind of the Wild West as far as their fully dynamic pricing model. And so sometimes you'll just see outrageous prices, and having points isn't necessarily a big advantage. And so in those cases, I would say, as long as it doesn't feel like you're getting a terrible value for your points, then you might as well spend them if you find a good opportunity to, especially if you're getting that fourth night free. I think it'd be hard to find examples of where a 4-night cash stay is going to end up being a better value at almost any IHG property than getting that fourth night free. And this leads us to our third and final reason why you might want to hold off on redeeming your points and miles. And that reason is the flexibility of last-minute travel changes. And what I think you'll find as you continue your journey in this travel game long enough, that last-minute changes, especially if you have to book new flights or last-minute hotels, can be very expensive. And when you have a certain stash of points and miles, that gives you some insurance against getting yourself into a situation where you're really paying way too much. So that's the number one reason, because with a lot of programs, the way things are priced in points and miles, even though it is correlated to the price, it varies quite a bit. And with some companies like American Airlines, their prices in miles don't even necessarily correlate at all to the price. The miles price seems to be all over the map. And sometimes it's an amazing deal, and just as often it's a terrible deal. But most importantly, there's enough instances when it is a good deal that it's always worth having a few miles around, at least let's say one flight's worth with American. So look at the programs that you use most often and take a look at whether or not having a certain cushion is worth it as a sort of last minute travel change. Insurance is one reason to not cash out everything just for the sake of cashing everything out. So hope this has been helpful. Let me know in the comments what your strategy is for earning and burning, or for hoarding. So take care, everyone. Ciao for now.